Hello everyone, my name is Joel Mueller, and today I'll be giving a speech about why we're not giving speeches in class right now. According to a scholarly article by Manuel Battinger, Richard Kuhn, Sarah T. Suter, Hans Hierich, Andres Wimmer, Richard Nahar, in a 2019 novel, Coronavirus, estimating the case fatality rate a world of caution, says the first known cases of coronavirus were reported was in Wuhan, China on December 31st, 2019. Like we all now know, this would be the stem that would change everyday life for many people around the world. This change in the world, for me, would occur on Saturday, March 21st, 2020, when Governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, placed a Stay-at-Home Act according to Petrilidan on March 20, 2020, an Illinois governor issues order requiring residents to stay at home. The lack of information on COVID-19 has begged the question, how do we get rid of it? How do we prevent it? What is the true way to respond to COVID-19? The main points that I would like to discuss in my speech today are: should every person in the United States be placed in quarantine? Or should only people that are more susceptible to the virus be placed in quarantine? After I've given both sides of the issue, I would like to open up for a class discussion and see what everyone else thinks we should do. Let's talk about my first main point. Should all people be placed in quarantine? According to a Worldometer on April 6, 2020, there have been 73,875 deaths related to COVID-19, with numbers continuing to rise each day. It can be said that the number of deaths that are occurring are due to people continuing to interact with each other. Being closer than 6 feet to another person can cause the virus to spread. COVID can also lay dormant in a person for a long period of time without them knowing that they even have the virus. So a person could have the virus and not know that they might be spreading it to another person. To help put an end to the spread, many places around the world have issued some kind of law to keep in their houses or in quarantine, except for essential places like the grocery store or the gas station, to help control the spread. This practice has helped hospitals have more control of the outbreak, giving them more time to set up stations for people infected with the virus. It also has allowed more time to receive ventilators to help those in critical condition. It also has allowed more time to get tests to give to people. Having people placed in quarantine has made a lot of people realize how dangerous the virus is, if they can't even leave their own house unless it's an absolute necessity. Having acts being put in place has opened the eyes of many that this virus was no jacking matter, like I said. The quarantine practices that have been set in place have made people more cautious of their surroundings and trying to keep the spread to a minimum. But what if these precautions are not enough? This brings me to my next topic. Should the most susceptible people be the only people placed in quarantine? Protesters all over have begun to protest the lockdown measures that their states or countries have set in place. In an article on April 21st, 2020, Coronavirus Protests, the moment a man in scrubs controls drivers in Denver, Colorado, during that time there was hundreds of people protesting at the state capitol. The quarantine has closed many businesses across the United States, which has led to many people to lose their jobs due to COVID-19. This has upset people because they believe they can still work during the pandemic. With the losses of their jobs, the United States could be heading to a depression on the same scale as the Great Depression once was. Also, the quarantine laws that are being set in place are making it very difficult for students to learn. Most schools have moved to online classes or completely closing school. Many students have had trouble learning while in quarantine, for many reasons, like the trouble submitting assignments or fully grasping everything said by a teacher on a Zoom call. Some students believe that it is unfair that they're having trouble with school because they are forced to stay at home when they signed up for classes that should be seated, not online. Students are starting to get mad with these changes and feel that they are wasting money on school when jobs are already difficult to come by, and they aren't learning in the first place. So why would they pay when they can't even get money because it's so hard to find a job for schooling that costs so much? Quarantine has also brought on a lot of mental health issues as well. Humans are social in nature, and not being able to socialize with other people has led to a lot of stress. And made a lot of people kind of go feel claustrophobic or just have trouble. They've just had trouble staying at home and not having anyone to interact with. According to Worldometer on March 5th, 2020, the estimated death rate of COVID-19 is 3.4%. To many people, this is a very low death rate. They believe that if you are healthy, that you will be fine as long as you quarantine yourself after contracting the virus. They argue that those who have a higher rate of dying from COVID-19 should be the ones placed in quarantine, and not those who are considered healthy, with no risk of the virus becoming worse if infected. Now that I have talked to you about should or should not be quarantined, I would like to answer some questions and get the class's view on the virus. But coincidentally enough, due to the virus and me recording my speech, I'll ask myself some questions that I think may have been asked, and I will give you my opinions or my answers to what I think we should do. One question that may be asked is, what should I do if I came in contact with someone who has COVID-19? In my opinion, we should go by the rules the government has given us and what I referred to in my speech earlier. First, you should get tested. Once tested, you should stay away from anyone you haven't been in contact with, or anyone in general, and quarantine yourself and wait for the test results to come back. How do you know if you are susceptible to COVID-19? This is a tricky question. If you have any previous respiratory problem history, you are more susceptible. There has been a correlation with people who vape are more susceptible to getting COVID. But to get a true answer, you should see your physician while you should see your physician while you're there. You might as well take a COVID-19 test. But to be honest, I think technically everybody is about the same susceptibleness as someone that has a medical issue. Do you have the same likelihood of catching the virus at an essential store like a grocery store as a business that is not essential like a bar? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. But at a bar, it is easier to catch because it tends to have large amounts of people in a small place, where in a grocery store, you can distance yourself from someone. Is making people quarantine illegal? The answer is no, as almost everywhere is under some kind of quarantine procedure. Can you be around someone who has been in quarantine in another house? Technically, the answer is yes, but still you shouldn't, because you don't really truly know if they've been around someone that may have had COVID. My goal of this speech was to allow everyone to have an opinion during these trying times. I wanted to give the pros and the cons of what life is like now that we live in a society that quarantine is the norm. As you sit at home and watch this speech, I want you to think, have we done what is right to respond to this virus? Or do we need to make changes? Thank you.